Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MSDynamicsworld.com. On this episode, we're talking about ISVs in the Microsoft channel and the prospects for building a growing business there. I'm joined by Mike Dickerson, CEO of ClickDimensions. The company was one of just 5 or so from the Microsoft Dynamics channel to make the Inc. 5000 list this year, which measures 3-year growth rates. By comparison, 2 years ago, the number of companies on that list was nearly 20. There's no single reason for the drop, but with the massive changes underway in this space, both with the products and Microsoft's partner strategy, there's plenty to discuss about what is changing, why, and how ISVs can position themselves for the future. All right, Mike Dickerson, welcome back to the podcast. Good to have you here.
Hey, Jason, great to be with you.
Right, and what I was really looking forward to talking with you about today was growth in the Microsoft partner channel and growth in entrepreneurship and business opportunities in that space. What really sparked my interest in this conversation was an announcement that I caught from ClickDimensions and sort of the broader Inc. 5000 list reveal for this year. ClickDimensions made the Inc. 5000 list for, I think, the fifth consecutive time, or maybe the 5th time recently. Over 100% growth over the last 3 years, which is really the key measure that list is all about. So congratulations on that. Obviously, no small accomplishment to keep kind of growth happening at a firm after so many years. But what also caught my attention was I went back and kind of I like to scan. I'm not a big fan of sort of magazine like ranked lists. I just I have various issues with it, which is probably a whole topic for another day. But but this is one that I do track because it has some relatively hard data in it with growth rates and some revenue numbers for the companies on the list and a few other employee counts and so forth. So it's a little more substantive, I feel like, and also it does growth is obviously very interesting and sort of a sign of lots of things in a particular business ecosystem. And when I looked at it this year, I think there were either 4 or 5 companies that kind of slot into the Microsoft partner channel or maybe the Dynamics channel more particularly. And that's down from like 18 a couple of years ago. So that's a pretty big drop. I actually don't know what it was in 2018, unfortunately, but presumably it was a step down and now another pretty big step down. And that really got me thinking. So I'm excited to maybe chat about that a little bit more with you. I don't know. Do you want to maybe start by characterizing what you're seeing in terms of sort of what ongoing growth really kind of means for ClickDimensions? It's obviously the company's gone through quite a bit of change over that time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there are a couple of things that obtain about ClickDimensions which are slightly at tension, all of which are true. Number one, ClickDimensions is 100% dedicated to the Microsoft ecosystem. Our product is built natively on Dynamics. We only sell through Dynamics partners, so we're entirely focused on this ecosystem and this channel. And having said that, and that's what's allowed us to grow. We had a particular value proposition, not just for the customers, but more importantly for the partners that proved to be pretty attractive. And we were able to, telescope that value proposition throughout a global ecosystem. And that is fundamental to what helped the firm grow. And, I got to give a lot of credit to the founders of this company and the early leaders of the company. Having said that, as you know better than lots of folks, Microsoft not only is a unique company and creates a unique ecosystem, but it is going through massive change. It started when Satya Nadella took over, and if you were to focus just on the Dynamics part of the business, that change has accelerated, and right now it is roiling with change. And so everything that has made it possible for ClickDimensions to grow A lot of those things are in sort of turmoil. But I think I'll go back to the point that we focus just on the Dynamics ecosystem. Because we're not focusing on a lot of other things, we have it as a full-time mission to try and understand what's going on at Microsoft and what's going on with the partners. And I think that has helped us navigate some very turbulent situation here. And I'll tell you, it's not. It's harder to keep driving the growth today than it might have been in years past. It certainly is interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you look a little bit more broadly, because the thing that really jumped out at me was sort of the lower number of companies listed on Inc. 5000, and I kind of came up with a few theories that I think I mentioned in an article I posted. That could have been the reasons why the number is lower. But do you have any guesses on that or hypotheses?
Yeah, I do. I think there are a couple of things. One is that Microsoft has really turned its attention to enterprise customers, and that has manifested itself in the way that they reorganized their sales force in July of 2017, really moving mid-market and below to inside sales sort of functions, and really focus on the enterprise, where they've done tremendously well. And if you were to look at Dynamics, their growth has come in the enterprise. And it's hard for startup companies to jump in to the enterprise end of the pool. And so if you're looking at the Inc. 5000, if you're looking at people growing fast, they're typically working with small companies, mid-market companies, and that's where you get your growers. Microsoft has, in Dynamics especially, pushed towards the enterprise. So good for them, but that may be one of the factors that leads to the trends that you're seeing. I think the second thing that's there is that and I'm sure the partners out there, ISVs and others, can appreciate this. Being a Microsoft partner is fantastic, but it also is not for the faint of heart. There's a lot of change in the programs they have, in their strategies, and the people change around a lot. So it's really hard to keep up with, and that makes it difficult for companies to invest sometimes, and for venture capital firms to invest in the space. So if I were looking at two things, I would see the move to enterprise, and I would see the introduction of sort of more commercial uncertainty as being two big factors.
Okay. Another one I had sort of put out there was mergers and acquisitions, and maybe that's part of the uncertainty, or part of the, I don't know, just the larger trend toward how companies that maybe were smaller and growing have been absorbed in the space, and that maybe just perhaps takes them off the table for lists like this. Although I don't know, you think that could be a contributing factor, or maybe less impact?
Yeah, I don't know about in this list. I think there's certainly in the SI part of the Dynamics channel, when Microsoft began the move to Dynamics 365, really combining CRM and ERP, that sparked a ton of consolidation for sure. But I think that you have to check. But I think at least as long as it was two fast growers coming together, that would probably that might even help on some of these lists. If it's Avanade or Hitachi doing acquisitions, maybe it doesn't. But so I hadn't really thought about that as a major contributor.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess the other thing I was trying to get my head around was how concerning it is in a sense. I guess on the one hand, to your point, if enterprise is really Microsoft's focus, and that's really that's where it's looking to see performance goals, more so than mid-market or below. Perhaps it's not a problem from Microsoft's point of view. But on the other hand, I mean, with the push to outsource and the push to try to entice more partners to do more in this space, which seems to be something Microsoft really wants. Obviously with sort of the right, I don't know, to structure it in the way that they want it structured. They would want to. I think they would want to be able to tell a story that says there's big opportunity here. Invest in putting your solution, aligning your solution with Common Data Service, aligning your solution with any of these first-party apps, with Power Apps, making connectors available. And I mean, the way you do that is you show the really big opportunity, and it's worth worth putting your resources toward that versus toward the Salesforce ecosystem or toward I don't know, selling against some other channel. I don't know. I mean, do you think Microsoft could be doing more to sort of promote or encourage growth that would maybe turn these kinds of numbers around?
Well, 100%. I think there are some things that they could do, but I want to go back to your first part. You said, is this a problem for Microsoft? As I look at Microsoft's revenue growth, their cloud growth, and their stock price, if they've got problems, they're not evident today. Now, I think that there are people within Microsoft that sort of realize that, hey, their bread, specifically in the Dynamics space, their bread was buttered by, mid-market firms and small firms, and this push to the enterprise is a pendulum swing, and at some point they've got to come back. And so my view is that that will start to become apparent. And if that were the case, there would be things that Microsoft could certainly do to help inspire companies to start in this ecosystem and to invest in this ecosystem. And I know those conversations are being had by some people in a company with almost 200,000 employees. But they're not front burner issues right now. They're topics of conversation, but they're not immediate concerns.
Yeah, I mean, I think the flip side to it is maybe from the ISV perspective. Is there still room for the? I guess the counter argument. It's not all about growth. If you're an entrepreneur, growth is obviously one goal, and it should be. If you're looking for an exit or an end result, not just a lifestyle business, that should be part of your planning, perhaps. But chasing growth isn't necessarily what everyone's going to be doing here. So I guess what I'm getting at is, is there still room for other models in the Microsoft channel, or is pressure pushing vendors toward just pursuing growth or some other similar metric in your view?
Yeah, so I think a couple of things. I think when you talk about Microsoft partners, there is a big difference between SIs and ISVs. And I think particularly in the Dynamics ecosystem, that business was built by lifestyle partners. I think 60% of our partners had 10 consultants or less, and that started with the Great Plains sort of days, and there was a almost like a cottage industry ethos. And when I came to ClickDimensions, one of the things that just blew me away is I remember going to the first Extreme in Lisbon after I'd become CEO, and it was like an old, a homecoming. There were so many people who'd known so many people for so long, and there was just a lot of hugs, and there was history. And ClickDimensions was a small company that was growing, and these partners were small businesses too. So that there was a lot of lifestyle business. I think. Along with the professionalization of Dynamics and the mainstreaming of Dynamics, it's no longer just sort of that, redheaded stepchild division over there. It's an important platform, but it's a very different thing. And I think that in the SI side, you're seeing people who were lifestyle partners either merging or retiring out of the business. I think that, and that, speaks to, I was at a Microsoft presentation, and the statement was that the ecosystem is short about 40,000, trained, certified, Dynamics kind of technical professionals. The ISV side is very different. And the ISV business is not really a lifestyle business, because I don't think it lends itself to that, because you get crushed by people with scale. And so the considerations are a little bit different there. Investors, and then I'm a recovering venture capitalist here. Investors, are enamored by some of the sexier stuff, and the Salesforce ecosystem and open source has historically been the hotter sectors, and Microsoft wasn't. I'm sure that's changing a little bit, and every LinkedIn acquisition, every GitHub was a big one, it helps tilt the scales back. But from an investor perspective, more capital goes into the other sectors than into the Microsoft sector. And from an ISV perspective, Microsoft is still, and they're trying, is still got some legacy. GitHub is fantastic, and it's a darling of developers, but there are some of us old enough to remember things like Netscape. And so, the one of the big transformations that I've seen since Satya Nadella took over, and it's still not done, is the view of Microsoft as a platform company for ISVs. Moving software workloads to the cloud is critical for Azure, not just for developers inside a company, but for ISVs. And they've done a ton of work to bring over, software companies. ClickDimensions is a tiny one. Consider SAP and Adobe. So there's a need for Microsoft to be able to work with ISVs. In Dynamics, I think they're still still sorting that out, and it remains to be seen how that goes. And but I do think fundamentally, over the long term, Microsoft wants to be a platform company and looks at Azure and Modern Office, and especially Dynamics, as ultimately as platform businesses. And to be successful as a platform business, at some point, you're going to have to get ISVs to build on that. And that's ISVs that are of, some kind of size and scale, not just, sort of hobbyist developers.
Great point. There certainly feels to me like there's still so much in that area that has to sort of shake out. And it makes me wonder sort of, what is really Microsoft's ability to influence the ISVs in terms of picking winners, or helping some to really grow versus others, if it really feels some strategic need to, or preference to push one over the other, and how much ISVs sort of feel like they are really a partner versus a competitor of them, and maybe both of those sort of touch ClickDimensions in particular to some degree. I know it's funny you mentioned Lisbon, because I think I first met you there briefly, and you would, like you said, it was you were still new to the company, and back then the same questions were being raised about what is Microsoft's role about in partnership or in competition with companies like yours.
Yeah, so I think obviously ClickDimensions is a unique one in this.
It might be.
And we when I talk to people at Microsoft, we the way that we handle it is we try and acknowledge it and say, if we can show how to grow together in the ecosystem and find ways to grow together, looking for white space to grow together, and understanding that where we compete, we're going to compete as gentlemen. We joke, Martin Kostel, who runs the marketing app, I sort of joke that we have we're like cousins. We have a little bit of a sibling rivalry. We also have common complaints about certain things, but it makes both of us better. Having said that, I think there are a couple of things that I would note is that first, I think that Microsoft, probably up in the Brad Smith part of the world, really shies away from picking winners. Yes, I think they make it very clear the 6 industries that they're focused on and vertical applications really fit into their sales motion. But I think that, for a company this size, antitrust things probably come in. I mean, you look at Apple getting some grief for using its platform to try and Amazon too, to try and pick, areas where people are growing and winning, and then selectively go after that. That probably is not the sort of the story that Microsoft wants to go forward with. It is a tricky bit of business, and I mean we're right there with it. With our marketing or the Microsoft marketing app competes with part of our portfolio, and we will be in deals head to head, and we try and speak well of each other and talk about our differences. But I'm sure that there are some salespeople who get paid, for winning that take have a sharper elbowed view than I might have, and the folks at Microsoft would have. It's modern co-opetition, that's for sure.
Sure, and I mean, I can think of other examples that are not exactly the same, but sort of equally muddy. The ServiceNow partnership is certainly an interesting one. I haven't probably dived into that as closely as I could. The Adobe relationship, and considering the acquisitions they've made, obviously kind of a different scale, but and then some of the other, one of the things I'm really tracking right now is a little bit of an aside here, but hearing from some ISVs about sort of their hopes and dreams that Microsoft really will make them sort of the one and only, like sort of the preferred choice if you need X capabilities. Horizontal is kind of what I've been hearing this from, but sort of horizontal, added solutions. Microsoft saying, here is the one that we can sort of bundle together with your Dynamics-focused solution or whatever. And I haven't seen much come from it, but I've at least sort of been hearing that's more of an approach that at least some ISVs are hopeful they'll get into in various scenarios.
I have a point of view on that. First of all, Adobe is a great example. Adobe is Adobe is an elephant big enough to dance with Microsoft, and they can have a great business in Azure and do a mega $100 million Azure deal, and they can have Marketo compete with the marketing app too. And the big companies of that size, can figure out how to do that. I mean, Microsoft has business relationships with Salesforce and Google, and competes with both of them too. So the bigger companies can handle that more than a small startup ISV, back to your earlier point. And then second, my comment to any ISV is that Microsoft is a software company, and it will continue to evolve, and you need to be ready to evolve as well. I've had conversations with James Phillips about ClickDimensions and his designs for a marketing app, and it was clear that what ClickDimensions did 3 years ago was not going to be commercially relevant if we just kept doing the same thing for the next 10 years. So we've had to innovate, change our business model, look for acquisitions, things like that. My advice to to an ISV who's hoping that they become the one and only for Microsoft is that that's probably not the most prudent bet. And I would separate, sort of corporate strategy and direction from local sales activity. There will always be an opportunity to win a particular deal if you are helpful to helping a salesperson win that deal at Microsoft, at a partner, what have you. And if you, sort of keep those things in mind, there's plenty of business to be had. But to become the one and only and have Microsoft ring your cash register forever, that is a little bit. I'm skeptical about that, given the speed with which Microsoft will change. I do have one last thing to say. One of the things that does help in the ISV community doesn't help so much with ClickDimensions, but I was talking to another ISV that was in the healthcare space, another portfolio company, in the AKKR portfolio, and they were talking about fears and concerns and things in Microsoft space. And I said, look, you guys are in the healthcare vertical, and they were also in the government vertical, and the co-sell programs that Microsoft has that allow an ISV to, essentially pay money to retire Microsoft sellers quotas. In those particular cases, that's super valuable to them. And so those are, things that companies like Amazon can't do. Microsoft, for that point in time where healthcare and government are important, they're trying to win deals. Their sellers can open up doors to help this, ISV, like I mentioned. Doesn't really help ClickDimensions. We have a product that competes with some of Microsoft, but for certain ISVs, Microsoft offers something that Amazon and Google just can't offer.
Okay, and that really kind of leads to the other question I wanted to get your input on, which is like, do you see other opportunities or other scenarios like that where really, really impressive growth is possible for vendors who want to work in the Microsoft channel? The one you just mentioned is a great one, but are you optimistic that we'll see others sort of finding ways like that to really prosper in this space?
I'd love to say yes. I think that it would be very hard until things finish sorting themselves out. I think it will be hard for ISVs to come into the Dynamics community. Azure's different. To come into the Dynamics ecosystem and see the kind of growth that ClickDimensions had. It's hard. And ClickDimensions got to a certain scale because certain things existed at a point in time. I just think it would be very tough to do to build a company like ClickDimensions today, in the Dynamics ecosystem. I think that there is a strong desire to make Dynamics a platform for ISVs, but they're not. They've got work to do to get there, both technically and commercially.
All right. If I could maybe just, do you have time for one more question? I wanted to maybe just sort of pivot a little bit more to the actual marketing and marketing automation space, because what you were just saying made me think back to when there were a lot of marketing automation competitors really trying to scale at the same time, and ClickDimensions was certainly one of them, with really kind of a differentiated approach with, like you were saying earlier, the focus on Microsoft amid competitors that were much broader, and still being out there in the market, being able to mark this kind of growth. But the thing, and I think I take your point. I mean, to an extent, a lot of the competition has consolidated or sort of standardized. There have been some winners and losers along the way, but what I sense is that when it comes to marketing and marketing automation and strategy to drive marketing automation, there's still a lot to be desired, I guess, in a lot of companies in terms of how well they can do it. I know. I think last time we talked, um, you had told me that that ClickDimensions in particular was looking at how to sort of make that the strategy part and the agency part of it, or sort of the development part of it, more realistic for companies. How has that gone? And I guess what are you seeing overall in terms of people's actual ability to get the most out of marketing automation today versus a couple years
Yeah.
ago?
So I think that's a great question. And if you look at all B2B companies, they have this challenge. They're staffed by people who are digital consumers in their private lives, and we're all surrounded by Netflix and Amazon and people who do amazing things, get us deeply personalized offers, figure out how to put messages in front of us wherever we're traveling, across the internet. They do some things that are pretty magical. They have a couple of things going for them. Number one, in the B2C world, you have one buyer and you can transact on a website. In the B2B world, you usually have multiple people in the buying decision, and you have salespeople and business development people. That human channel and the omni-channel thing is tough. The second thing that's going on is that there are some things that really limit deployment to the rich and famous. The technology to put it to get all the pieces is expensive. It's complex to put together. And even if you had it all put together for free, there just aren't enough people who know how to use the technology. And this is true if you look at Gartner findings or reports. They'll talk about the biggest issue is companies saying they don't have enough people who know how to do all of the bits and pieces of the magic that companies like Amazon does. And that's part of the reason that you have 7,000 marketing technology companies, because each of them do a tiny little bit of something, whether it's lookalike ad targeting, or whether it's SEO optimization, or whether it's persona development. I mean, all of these things matter, but putting them all together is really difficult. And so the biggest barrier is actually getting, there are three barriers: the cost, the complexity, and then ultimately getting the people to do things. And so, one of the things that I know folks are interested about ClickDimensions is that, Microsoft has a marketing app. Microsoft can make fantastic technology, but somebody's still got to be able to use it. And we see whether it's Marketo or even with ClickDimensions, there's more capabilities than our customers are able to use. And so that situation obtains across all marketing technology, not just in our ecosystem. And just selfishly a plug for ClickDimensions. I mean, our kind of view was that we're lucky because we have 3,700 customers who all operate on a common data model. And so our support people can see all the way through the marketing applications that we sell down to the data layer, and we can support and help at all of that level. What we also see is that, and we can do that in real time, in the application, real time chat windows, et cetera. The other thing that we can do is that when it comes to actually putting together a full and comprehensive marketing program using all the different technologies, because our customers all use a common data model, and because we've got some global scale, our bet is that we can give customers a package of services that allows them to augment their team with a little bit of this expertise and a little bit of that expertise and a little bit of this, to be able to orchestrate all of the components that you need to do the magic kind of stuff that the rich and famous are doing. And that's kind of our bet. And that's again, getting back to my conversation with James Phillips, ClickDimensions has to evolve. We can't just do the same marketing automation product that we did 3 years ago. We've got to add, performance marketing dashboards like we did with our Sweet Spot acquisition, and we've got some other things that hopefully we'll announce in the not too distant future. And we have to, bring it together with support and services. So that's how we, look at, trying to coexist in a world with the Microsoft marketing app. And my hope is that, the more that Microsoft puts into the Dynamics platform, the rising tide lifts all boats, and we can keep figuring out how to create value for our customers and for our customers. That's a little bit different than what Microsoft does.
Excellent. Well, Mike, thank you so much for taking the time to chat over this. It's a great couple of topics, and I look forward to catching up again soon and hearing new announcements from the company.
Fantastic. Thanks, Jason.
All right. Thank you. This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. My thanks to Mike Dickerson for joining me today. If you have any feedback, please get in touch. jgumpert@msdynamicsworld.com. Until next time, this is MS Dynamics World signing off.